Welcome back to Psyched for Peds, the child mental health podcast for pediatric clinicians, helping you help kids. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Fallucco, child psychiatrist and mom. So we're continuing our conversation about burnout in healthcare with Dr. Jessi Gold, Chief Wellness Officer at the University of Tennessee Health System, psychiatrist, and author of the book, How Do You Feel? One Doctor's Search for Humanity in Medicine. In our last episode with Dr. Gold, we talked about how to recognize signs of burnout. And now the real question for this episode is, what do we do when we recognize that we or someone we love is burned out? I'm looking for solutions, life hacks, pro tips to help us deal and survive in healthcare. Dr. Jessi Gold, what would you recommend?
So, disclaimer. Whenever I talk about individual solutions, people want to punch me in the face because the system is a big problem. And I think they think when I'm talking about an individual solution that I'm not acknowledging that the system is a big problem. I chose the career and the career path I have to attempt to fix the system. But in the meantime, most of the people listening can't fix the system. It's not their job. It involves the government. It involves insurance companies. These are big, big monolithic industries that we're fighting for these things to change medicine. But inherently, if you don't want to quit, which is an option, by the way, but if you don't want to quit, you have to figure out how to fit in an existing mold, which is the existing culture and the existing sort of system problems. You have to have faith and hope that someone's taking your feedback and listening, that someone like me is working on that stuff in parallel, but that stuff takes time. And so in the meantime, should you want to stay in the field, you do have to do individual things. So the individual things that I've seen be helpful, one is actually paying attention to how you feel. It is cheesy. It's the title of my book for a reason. But really, we spend so much time on other people that we don't even pause to do a self-check-in. And if we did, we would notice stuff earlier, like whatever those symptoms are for you or whatever those things that might be changed for you. So sometimes I'm like, how did I sleep? How am I interacting with my peers and colleagues? How mad am I at my emails? Whatever that is, right? I'm not saying do that every 2 minutes. I'm saying like once a week would be nice just to make sure that you actually are checking in with yourself and acknowledging your humanity in this situation. Another thing that can be really helpful is our brains evolutionarily are designed to remember the bad thing and to pick out the bad thing, right? So we learned if we ate a poisonous berry and it made us sick, not to eat that berry again. And so our brain was like, poisonous berry today, poisonous berry today. All I did was eat a poisonous berry today. And so our brains are like basically supposed to tell us all the things we do wrong over and over, but in the way that it manifests in somebody who's a perfectionist is not good. And so there's two ways to combat that. One is self-compassion, which is probably the most important thing for anybody in medicine. I have to be gentle and kind to myself and say nicer things to myself, not if I burn out, I'm a horrible doctor. If I burn out, this week was really hard, I totally get it. Be nicer to yourself. And the other thing in that same vein is like trying to pick out the good stuff in your day. There's a thing called 3 Good Things. You could get that from Duke online. They have a program for it. That's a text program. But if you don't go that way, you can literally just write down the 3 good things of your day. What it does is force you to remember that even though that you had the poisonous berry, maybe that like someone said something nice to you or a patient complimented you or you helped someone today or whatever that is. And so you're you're left with more of a balance. And I think we really need the balance so that we don't just go, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. Nobody wants it. And then on top of that, I'm not sleeping, I'm not functioning, I'm going to work sick, I'm going to burn out. There's just no way. And so those are a couple things that I think are easy life hacks that have worked for me, have worked for patients. And I will say sometimes people don't like a woo-woo thing and think that like the 3 good things or things like that might feel a little like there's no way. There's tons of evidence on that. You can see it in my book, but you can also see all of the stuff by Brian Sexton, who made the program. They've studied this.
The first thing that you can do to survive in this culture or continue navigating in this culture is pay attention to how you're feeling. How's your sleep? How's your mood? How's your energy? Just how are you responding to your inbox? Or for me, I think the tipping point was like, how do I feel at the end of the day? How, of course, we're tired, but can I deal with bedtime? It got to the point where my sweet little guy, who was probably 6 or 7 years old at the time, was like, Mommy, it's time for our minute. It's time for you to tuck me in and we talk. And I was so tired and just done talking that I wanted to avoid it. I'm like, maybe if I fall asleep on the couch down here, he won't notice and he'll forget. And I feel so bad about it in hindsight. And in hindsight, I realized, yeah, that was a symptom that something was not great, that these things that are supposed to be life-giving and the priorities in my life, like family, were taking a back seat. So number one, ask yourself how you're feeling, be honest about it. And if you can, have some real life people who can reflect and ask you those questions and who you can be honest with, whether it's your therapist or your friends or your family or somebody. Number two was fight our natural tendency to focus on the negative things by practicing self-compassion, like giving ourselves some grace, being nicer to yourself. And then finally, three, try to consciously get your brain to pay attention to the positive things in your day. One of the things that my family does when we try to have dinner together, on the few times that we don't have 8,000 activities and are actually able to sit at a table and eat a meal, we do this thing called rosebud and thorn. And it's not exactly three good things, but it's where you talk about the rose, the best thing in your day. The bud, we interpret that as something else that's pretty good in your day, but not quite a rose. And then finally, the thorn, something that's challenging that you're dealing with. And we go around the table and each of the kids and I and my husband talk about that. And it's a nice way to reconnect and also to try to remember, again, like the easiest thing that comes to my mind every single day is the thorn. I'm like, oh, I can go on and on about that thorn. Let me tell you who annoyed me today. But anyway, to the point that our minds tend to focus on the negative.
And we have a culture of that too, right? I think there's camaraderie in, for lack of a better word, bitching about some stuff in the workplace. Like we like that. It's just when that takes over and you can't do anything else, like it's really hard to go into work knowing that your only sort of solace is to complain to a friend, right? I think you need the friend, but it'd be nice if you talked about something completely not related to work as well.
Exactly. The other solace in going to work, it makes me think of, we had a drawer full of chocolate at one of the clinics that I worked at that one of my colleagues brought. And I was like, I can do it today because of that drawer full of chocolate.
My admin has like a bunch of candy. And I'm always like, are you trying to kill me inadvertently? Because every time I walk by, it's really hard not to eat the candy. But
gosh. It's like such a stress reliever. We're not that we're endorsing that by any means. Okay. You've done such a good job about destigmatizing mental health and being really open about your own personal journey and mental health journey. You have written a memoir about your own experience and struggles, helping more people feel comfortable about having emotions and having struggles. And so I just want to thank you for that. It's incredible.
Thank you. Someone asked me what I feel like when I talk about this stuff. And sometimes I feel bad that I even have to be thanked for doing it. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but I get it because I know what role models exist for people who have talked about some of this stuff openly. And it's part of why I've consciously made the decision to do it. But sometimes I wish it was boring. I wish that me having said I'm on meds or that I've been depressed or that I've been burned out, I'm the 1,000th person who's done that in medicine instead of, I don't know, top 20 or something. And I think that it would be nice. I'm hoping we get there where enough of us feel okay talking about it that I don't have to be thanked for it. But in the meantime, I'm happy to be a trailblazer of sorts in this conversation because I've done enough of the processing to be able to share my story. Like not everybody can, not everybody will ever want to, but we do need some people just like we do athletes, just like we do celebrities, just like we do whatever other extra group you want to include. Like we all need the people who like break it down and say, oh, turns out we have this too. And I'm happy to be one of them. I just sometimes like when people say thanks, I'm like, I get it. And I wish I didn't have to be thanked for it.
Yeah. No, and it's such a good point. It's funny because I think as doctors, as people in healthcare, we're one of the last people to open up and to be vulnerable. And just with the Olympics having recently happened, I think about Coco Gauff. I think about Michael Phelps and other incredible athletes performing at a high level, Simone Biles, like who are open about their own mental health struggle and how empowering that is for other people. And yet, as you point out, we don't have a lot of us in medicine who talk about this. So another reason to thank you for pushing our field forward. So before we close, do you have any final pieces of advice about either recognizing burnout or what to do when you see burnout in yourself?
Yeah. First of all, let me thank the audience for what they do, because I don't think that we get thanked enough in the workplace. Like, it's why we need to remind ourselves, because like, I'm a psychiatrist. My patients don't thank me very much. I think because they don't think they're supposed to. I don't know, but it doesn't happen very often because of boundaries or something. And so we get in this place where we don't realize we're helping people, even the tiny places that we're helping people. And so I hope that the people listening know that their jobs are really hard. We wouldn't exist in a lot of spaces without them. And I'm grateful for what they do. And that at the same time, if the work that they do is impacting their life, it should. There's a quote that I like that I'm going to totally butcher, but maybe you have it written down because your face looks like you do.
Yes.
Do you?
Is this the Rachel Remmer
Yeah.
one?
Yes.
Oh, or Remen?
Have
Yes.
So Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen says, the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet.
It's in so many ways, it's like the air that we breathe is challenging. Of course, we're going to have trouble breathing. We don't view it like that. We view it like somebody made a mistake doing that, or somebody is not like living up to expectations by having their job affect them. But like, the stuff that we do should affect us. It should not be commonplace to see a kid struggle, or see a kid be hurt, or see a kid who has trauma, or listen to a parent who's really worried about their child. Like, whatever you want to say, insert challenge here, shove a mental health visit into 10 minutes.
Right.
That's not easy. That's hard. It's going to affect you. And do not beat yourself up for that. Take care of yourself for that.
Thank you. I just like, to the people in the back, what you're doing is hard. It's legitimately hard and challenging. And it's like walking through water, of course, is going to make you wet. Get help when you need to get support. You deserve it just as much as everybody around us. So give yourself permission to take time and to get help. And you had said something really nice in your book. You talk about these really interesting patient vignettes of other healthcare workers who are struggling and their experiences of coming to see you and how hard that is. In one scene, you're talking to a character who's a PGY3 resident who's on medical leave to take care of mental health problems and is feeling bad, like, who's covering for me? And while I'm out, what are people thinking about me? And how is this going to affect my career? And all the anxiety thoughts just spinning. And you, in the book, right now you're taking care of yourself, and quote, instead of failing in your job, you're focused on getting better, and which over time will make you better able to do your job and make you a better, more empathetic doctor and leader. And I've loved that so much. And there's so much truth in it. Thank you for that. Thank you for all of this.
I wish we framed getting help like that. I think about therapy like that. I go every week. Am I in a 10 out of 10 crisis right now? No. But does it make me better at my job? Yes. And therapy training and psychiatry training tends to think a little bit more like that than other fields in medicine. And we all can benefit from learning more about ourselves. We all can benefit from taking time to take care of ourselves. Because if we can't take care of ourselves, how are we supposed to take care of other people? When we talk about culture change, that's what we mean. Like, that this is part of being a good leader, that this is part of being a good doctor, that this is part of being a good mom, friend, sister, whatever you want to put in there. It's all part of it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And for those of us who are listening, again, Dr. Jessi Gold's book coming out in October 2024 is called How Do You Feel? One Doctor's Search for Humanity in Medicine. And I hope you guys will all check it out. It is a fantastic read. I've read through it twice now and am still laughing and at other times crying and then highlighting and underlining like somebody who's a little obsessed about reading, which I am. It's beautifully written in addition to being a really important topic. So thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and for all the work you are doing, Dr. Jessi Gold, to change the culture of healthcare for the better.
Thanks for having me. And I hope people pick up the book and feel the same that you do. And I would love to hear if they do on my socials or wherever.
And you're available at Dr. Jessi Gold on all of the platforms. And
all of the platforms.
All the platforms. Everybody just check out our show notes and we'll have some more detailed information about how to access the book and access Dr. Jessi Gold.
And as a brief recap of the highlights from our episode, we talked about the importance of checking in with yourself and really asking yourself, how do you feel? And Dr. Gold also shared recommendations about how to counter our natural tendency to focus on the negative by practicing two things. One, self-compassion, and two, gratitude. And I want to thank all of our Psyched for Peds listeners who have reached out and shared personal stories and questions related to burnout. And this has inspired us to do another episode next week where we talk about specific exercises and tools that might help you recognize signs of burnout and, more importantly, take steps to try to correct things if needed. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.